Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Expat Lens. It's been a while. I'm your host, Jack Xavier. Today on the podcast, my guest and I discuss how to find your place in Japan, the importance of network building in that pursuit, and talk about a few methods that worked for him. There is a lot of interesting advice in this episode, so make sure to stick around until the end. Without further ado, let's take another look through the Expat Lens. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Expat Lens. Today, joining me on the podcast is a Renaissance man of creativity, a published writer, a recorded rapper, an experienced editor, and an aspiring voice actor, a martial artist. The list goes on. Is there nothing this man cannot do? We are going to get into the details of that and so much more today. It is my pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to this new friend, Savon. Hi, Savon. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Jack. Wow, you about to make me bust a tear right now.
I still got it, folks.
Yeah, dude. But thanks for having me on. I'm really excited. I've actually been looking forward to this for like a good bit ever since we started talking, honestly. Considering like the logistics you got set up, like this is way more than I could have imagined.
Oh, you're too kind. It's not as complicated as you make it out to be, but thank you for those kind words.
Yeah.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Your origin story, your Japan genesis, so to speak. You first came to Japan about 6, 7, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay. And that was through the U.S. Navy. I just wanted to know, did you have any choice in the matter? Like, were you assigned to Japan, or how did that work out?
So that's actually a fun story. When I was in A school, and this is where you get tested for the rate, like your job in the military. While I was studying for that, we had a testing, screening, scoring, all that kind of stuff. You go through that, and based off of your points, you can theoretically vouch for yourself to go somewhere else. Now, it's no guarantee. There's no promise of anything. It's just maybe we'll consider it type energy. You know what I'm saying? I really wanted to come to Japan. I just really liked it a lot. Everybody tested very well. So it was even more competitive to try to get first dibs on where to go. I was one of the folks that rose their hand when our instructor said, like, who wants Japan? And I held my hand up because there was only 3 slots and like 4 or 5 people had their hands up, and I wasn't going to let my hand go down. Like, I was just going to stand here until somebody's hand fell off.
A war of attrition.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just going to be awkward in this damn room. You know what I'm saying? Hold that like it's a salute. I don't care. I held my hand up, and a couple people dropped theirs, and I was one of the lucky folks that could come to the land of the rising sun. From there, got based out here, served honorably, can say that proudly. Then pursued college, got my degree. Major was in video communications, and my minor was in art with a focus on like digital art and stuff like that, because that's what I wanted to mainly focus on. I touched base with a little bit of motion graphics. I'm nowhere near where I wish to be. I really appreciate the professors that I had and got exposure to. Yeah, just grateful. That's what this country has made me grateful.
Well, first and foremost, just thank you for your service. It's just a standard I think we should acknowledge. And do you mind if we talk a little bit more about the details of your higher education?
Yeah, sure.
Here? So you chose to stay in Japan, and you went to Temple University, Japan, which is the Japan campus of an American college that's in Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I did a little research, looked into it, and it seems like there's a very diverse student body. Their website says 60% of the students are from countries all over the world, and then the remaining 40 are Japanese nationals. I thought it might be interesting to go into first what your overall experience was like at Temple, but also what was the process getting out of the service and then into Temple? Was it smooth, an easy transition? Were there any road bumps? Like, just for anyone considering that route.
Yeah, for me personally, because the thing is, my job in the military was paperwork, administration, and stuff. So there was a lot of things that I knew to do prior to. I, of course, missed some steps myself, but I knew what questions to ask going into it. So what I can say is Temple University, Japan, it's a very interesting community, and it's a really interesting place to learn because of all the people that you will get exposed to. I had so much worldly initiations there just because, I'm an inner city kid from St. Louis, Missouri. You know what I'm saying? Like, I never met nobody from Russia. I never met nobody from Saipan and whatnot. And, a guy like me standing next door, sitting down, taking notes with folks from Taiwan, it's the kind of thing that a guy like me would never imagine. I can't conceive that stuff. It's like a new color. You hear about people from other countries, but like when you're standing next to them, it's like, man, they different. Oh, I'm different. And we in the same room together. Like, and the thing that's, creating this, situation is our ability to share the language and share an education. And there's something cool about that. You realize that you have more in common with your fellow man, woman, person than you could ever imagine.
That's very heartwarming.
I'm also a really sentimental sucker, so all the people are like, oh my god.
No, it's good. It's good, it's genuine, and that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, I think what also unites us is also, it starts with a shared interest in Japan, because we all wanted to come here, regardless of the reason. There's always a different reason for that and stuff. That actually opens the door for a lot of just conversation, things of that nature.
I totally agree with that in my own personal experiences as well within university or just any other kind of expat community activity.
Yeah.
It feels so much easier to just go up and talk to people because, like, that they're here probably because they like Japan.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, every once in a while there'll be somebody who you come across and they'll be like, oh yeah, no, my company sent me over here or whatever.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
For the most part, everyone is like at some point been a little bit of a Japan nerd or whatever, and like it's easy to connect on that pop culture level or shared interests. So totally, man, like I 100% feel where you're coming from.
Yeah, we're doing it right now,
Exactly, right? Actually, in a previous conversation, you had mentioned to me that you felt that Japan was somewhat isolated in terms of the expat community, but then you discovered if you look for them, there's all sorts of these little pocket subcultures to be found.
Oh, man, yeah.
Specifically, you told me, and here's the shout-out list, right?
Yeah.
You told me that you have ties to the Tokyo Comedy Store, which is an improv community, the CrossFit group Intensity Matters, the Taekwondo school, Quiet Flame, the Filipino martial arts school, and correct me if I'm mispronouncing this, Kali Majapahit?
Oh, Kali Majapahit.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Also, you have been known to help out and volunteer at the English Language Film School, among other groups that you're a part of. Like, you seem to be this massive connector. I think your network just spreads far and wide.
I think it's also like a thing where I'm just like, I'm too curious for my own good. It's like, oh, this exists. I actually, the Tokyo Comedy Store, those are really good people there. Chris Wells and Kali, they've been really good to me, just everybody in that group. And it unites a lot of folks together. Always a good time. Always has been. And I started there actually while I was in the Navy. Yeah, because they were active during that time too, and I was still active here in Japan. And me and my buddy just went there on a whim. Back then, their venue location kind of had a very intimidating door, so I was kind of scared to open it. And like me and my buddy, who was also in the Navy at the time, we were like, yeah, man, I don't know about this. And like, it's all right, homie, I'm right behind you. But we opened the door and like they were like, hey, we got some improv, some acting chops and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I get to exercise that thespian muscle again.
One of the things that I'd like to tie back around to this point in the conversation is that when you started telling me about this originally, I got the impression that like once you venture into these communities, it's easier to branch out and like one leads to the other. And you can make all sorts of different connections. But that initial step, depending on your personality, it could be kind of daunting for people, which I think is where this shared interest in Japan really comes into play. But I kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that, like, because you're such a social guy. Like, I don't know. This is a really open-ended question, but how do you do it?
It's funny. I actually being called a social guy is such like a inverse of who I was such a long time ago. So being called social is actually funny, but I appreciate that. If I could put it into simple words, I found myself being willing to put myself out there because my curiosity possessed me to do so. It possessed me to take the risk to do so. And I was willing to be wrong. And I think Japan is a safer country for you to do that.
How do you figure?
The crime rate.
Oh, okay. Oh, you meant literally safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, because of like how easy it is to kind of like engage with people, and as long as you got your wits about yourself and can like, reciprocate, manners, also, just general like cultural etiquette that the country calls for and stuff like that, that even like people that can't even understand Romanji should be able to get, what I'm saying? Like, I think it's a better place to do that. Now, I'm not saying it's the only place to do that, but I am saying that for me personally, Japan has been a country that's tended to reward me for my curiosity. It's tended to at least educate me, worst case scenario. And maybe it's because, again, St. Louis, like, I may have had my wits about me in a few close encounters, because I have had them. I think we all have. Japan's safe, but every place has its problems.
Sure.
So it's like, be responsible, but also be willing to walk and talk and, frolic about. It's a big island. You're not the only one who wants to make something.
A senpai of mine, an upperclassman in university who was a British guy, he introduced me to the concept of my island syndrome. Have you ever heard this before?
Yes.
Okay. So just because we're sort of talking about that, and there is a dichotomy here, right? Like go out there, mingle with the people, frolic, and then my island syndrome, right?
Yeah. Just like I'm the only one who's allowed to walk and talk.
Right,
and
right.
This is my frolic.
Just a quick definition of that. Some expatriates or internationals who come to Japan and they experience what it's like to be the only foreigner in a group, and then you start to feel like, I don't know if that's part of your identity or something, but it becomes something that you use when comparing yourself to other foreigners who are here. So it's like, hey, what's your level of Japanese? How long have you been in Japan for? Right? Like, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but I felt like it was sort of in the same sphere of where we were going with the conversation.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. Been victim to it. It's funny because like I think that's probably like one of the other traps that I never fell into. Because I think that's the other thing. I found it, and maybe this ain't for everybody, I found it way more fulfilling to find people that had a shared interest with me in the country and the things that I liked being here, as well as just in general, than making it about me. There are people that are not going to share that psychology for whatever reason. And not to say that it's wrong, and not to say that I myself haven't had things where I'm just like, oh, this is about me, this is my moment and stuff like that. But it's usually about things I made. I didn't make Japan. None of us made Japan. Japan made Japan. Like, again, like, we talked about this, like, the audacity. It's like, this is my Japan. I think it says a lot about an individual where they identify so strongly with being the tokenized foreigner in a group that they would act so territorial over it or seek to create like a hierarchy over it. I don't think anybody that settles for that has any vision for a real future here.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? They've become the tokenized foreigner, and then I would say, like, my gut impression is that they like Japan so much and they want to be this special foreigner, so they do want to stay for a long time. Why do you think they are not destined to last long?
I mean, I wouldn't say like destined to last long. Like, you can stay in Japan, but that doesn't mean that you're in the country. There's a difference between uh being in Japan and living in Japan.
Oh,
You
okay.
know what I mean?
Interesting. Let's go into the nitty-gritty of that.
Like the perpetual, the perpetual foreigner, the tourist, the individual that kind of just has their hobbies but never really creates any connections besides the circle that they came off the plane with. I've seen that. But like I also think too, it's like you see this worldwide. Even I wouldn't even say it's just a Japan thing. I think Japan's just an easier place to do it. And you have those people that go to the same bars and clubs back at your home country. They never really leave. They stay in that place, and they're familiars there. They know that.
Big fish, little pond
Big
type
fish,
of a deal.
little pond type deal. And I think, because the foreigner community is small, it's pretty damn small. It's easy to do that. It's easy to play big fish out here. And if you have enough push and enough, positive favor amongst your peers in Japan, wherever it is, you're probably going to be enabled in that regard. In the negative aspect, you're going to be more, you're going to have more audacity and like how long have you been here, what's your end level and stuff like that. And like I don't know, I've met people that kind of stood by those things but haven't really made anything.
Right.
Like, I mean, kudos to you for getting to a high level in Japanese. Kudos to you for understanding like the etiquette and whatnot. Like your keigo is so sugoi, oh badass. Like kudos for all that. But have you helped the community? Hell, when I was in the Navy and stuff like that, we even did stuff like that. I helped out for orphans. We did little things like that. I used to teach special needs children. It was a really wholesome job. There's a domestic shelter out here that I helped with one of my senpais at one point.
Wow, you are so active.
Yeah. Yeah. I see it as a good problem to have for now.
No, I think it's great, man. Really, honestly.
You're great.
No, you're great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, like, if you encounter one of these My Islanders, so to speak, how would you diffuse the situation? Like, how would you kind of deflect that sort of negative energy? Because you said that you've had that experience. We all have, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it does kind of excuse the terminology, but like it becomes a dick measuring contest. And it's like, I don't have time for that. Like,
can I tell you a secret?
Please.
They tend to not talk to me.
Ah!
They tend to not want to talk to me. Yeah, so hopefully it stays that way.
I think that's a very healthy view to take on the subject. Just, okay, yeah, good for you, man.
Right.
Keep at it. Thanks, bye, and
Right.
move on to
and
the
the
next.
thing is, it's like, I mean, at one point when I do learn the language, which, quite the journey. But when I do learn the language, if anything, I'm just going to play dumb like I can't speak it just so I can avoid them. Because I don't want to play that game either. I mean, maybe I would have that mindset if I had, so much enablement for that. Like, I wake up tomorrow in one, maybe I can play that card too. I mean, but I don't want to do that. So maybe I should just continue to like mind my circles and stuff like that and who I am. And, I'm pretty proud of like the seeds of what I've tried to like start amongst the people that I've been connected with so far. And I'm always, I'm always surprised by what I tend to discover about what's just in my circle and what that can lead to next. Quick segue. We talked about like my martial arts and stuff like that, and Quiet Flame and whatnot. Aside from Taekwondo, they also do stunts. And one of my buddies there, Grisky de la Merce, shout out, that dude a king. I love him. And we usually catch ramen a lot after practice. And he is part of L's English Language Film School. And he had his final project coming up where he was one of the directors, and he reached out to me. After reaching out to me, got to meet Rory, who's like the owner of the company. Really good vibe, very creative stuff happening in there. And afterwards, there was a networking event at this one venue run by a company called Blink. And their whole thing is same thing, connecting, building community and whatnot. I need to look more into them myself. But there were so many cool, interesting people at that event. And from there, I was exposed to my first opportunity and many that I've been looking for, a voice acting gig. And it surprised me, and it was legit, and I'm so excited. It's called Remy Red is Dead. It's in post-production right now. It's up on IMDB. Director Sumika Sakai.
So, wow, that's incredible. You have already done the voice acting for this, and that's...
Yeah.
Wow, man. Okay, you told me about that, I don't know what it was, maybe 3 weeks ago or something, and you're like, I might have gotten the part, and it's like, now it's post-production. Like, wow, man.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked too, again, being grateful and whatnot. It's interesting how these things happen. But my whole thing is like, gotta keep moving. Gotta keep moving. Like, this is a sign that I'm on the right track. What's next? And making sure that I'm also looking around to see how I can enable others if I'm over here getting enabled as well.
That's very admirable. If you don't mind, can we talk a little bit about your main job then?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think it's interesting, and I think a lot of us do this. We have our main job, and then we have our side job, and maybe we hope, one day if the side job becomes the main job, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
But like, you have to do something in the meantime in order to support all of those extra projects that you're doing. And I think maybe you're going to be able to provide some insight about that process, but also just like talking about, your job in Japan and how you got it and how you're applying it.
Yeah, sure. So my job in Japan is a media productions crew member and specialist. Work with cameras a lot. My job involves video editing, videography, judging image quality. I'm training people now. Project management. It's very, very layered work, and like, I'm getting exposed to so many different things at the same time. It's like a crash course. I am really grateful for being able to see whether or not I could actually do this, because I think I told you, like, I never thought I could actually do media production at all. I was primarily a writer and storyteller. Tech in any regard kind of tended to terrify me a bit. Like, I was interested in like computers and whatnot, but like really much on a surface level, and as much as it applied to video games. But like, I became way less intimidated because I was so fascinated with the possibilities of what stories I could tell, understanding the technology.
Right.
And I was like, wow, if I just overcame this fear, maybe I could tell stories in different ways and convey messages and express myself in different ways. And the desire of seeking that catharsis outweighed my anxiety. And
that is a kernel of wisdom right there. And I've heard this from other places too, but to hear it from you as an organic statement, I think is very interesting, because I'm a true believer in that. Like, oftentimes I find myself and others, they want to do something, but you're not forced to act until the pain of not doing that thing becomes more painful than the fear of doing it. Right? Yeah, it's just like, it's really dumb, but like, yeah, just go out there, just try, like, just do it,
just do it.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I'm feeling it. And we also talked about this as well, how one of the biggest hangups for, gaining proficiency or just a sense of comfort in a new skill, new talent, new anything, hobby even, is overcoming that, inner critic telling you that you're not good enough, that you're not qualified to be doing this and X, Y, Z. And it's like, I find, and this might be just a me thing, but I think it's something that if it reaches even one person, I think that that's something that I think is worth merit. There's the voice in our heads when we're trying to do something new that holds expectations for what you should be. And all of those things are comparisons to what you are now. Not what you're seeking to be, what you are now. And every time you mess up, every time you trip and stumble, you're going to say, see, this is why you don't know how to do this. Because you're stupid, because you're this, that, or the other, all these negative confirmations or affirmations to rationalize why you never got out of your comfort zone in the first place. But the thing is, the thing making you uncomfortable is that voice right now. It's not anyone else, you know. Now, bear in mind, I'm a pragmatist. I try to be as practical and pragmatic with my optimism as possible because I think that is a responsibility when you're talking about these things. I don't think people should just jump. I think people like get this impression. I feel like this analogy has been used to death. Just jump and the parachute will come. No, it won't. You will fall. You can fall. Being cognizant of like what goes into learning something and understanding that as you develop competence and stuff, those expectations will arise and you will be exposed to responsibilities, not opportunities, responsibilities. Like my job, like when I got the opportunity to do that job, it was an opportunity first, but it was also a responsibility.
How did that opportunity present itself?
Whoa, that is a hell of a story.
Did I just open Pandora's box
here?
I
mean, kind of, because there's a lot of emotions that went into it. Like I said, like I kind of like went against the grain of what my thinking said that I couldn't do and just jumped into this. And
so should we disregard the advice from a few seconds ago?
I mean, in the sense of like, well, bear in mind, when I say I jumped into it in college, which is different from just selling all your shit and going to LA, which, you know.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, and kudos to those people who go and do that, you know. If you make it, you make it. But like, the thing is, it's like, it's different from when you put yourself in the space to learn and to make mistakes in an environment that allows you to, you're able to fine tune yourself and hold yourself accountable. Now, if you go out into the real world, you got to learn some harder lessons and stuff like that. And
the world will teach you.
The world will teach you. Yes. Very good, Jack. The world will unfortunately have to teach you at that point. Going from that, I was able to figure out what I like to do, how I liked to do it. Primarily like stuff like lighting and green screen. Was comfortable enough with the software to where I felt like if I needed to get an edit done, I could. I was even doing edits for my college at one point. They hired me out at one point, part-time little gig or whatever. But it was nice. It was nice. Going from that, I was just trying to make sure that I qualified. But another thing that I think I want to talk about too is while I was in college, I was able to explore the depths of what we're talking about now, which is community building. And shocker, believe it or not, Japan cares a lot about that. So my little production club actually mattered that I started in college. So anybody out there that are like, oh, well, I got a club or whatever and stuff, and like school or whatever and stuff, at least in Japan, as far as I can tell, they care about this stuff. This is vetted advice that I got from a millionaire out here.
Whoa.
Yeah. Gonna keep it, you know, anonymous and whatnot. But like, my thing is like, I've had this conversation with somebody who's made it, and they themselves have said, yes, clubs matter. Wow. Anybody who thinks they don't is wrong.
What would the process be after that? So you're in your club, you're doing your experimentation in a safe zone, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
And then you're getting this experience, and then what happens? Then you try to, you know, make that jump, but a measured jump.
Yeah.
And go out into the world with...
Yes, proof of concepts and stuff like that. Because that's like your beginning. In college, at least in Japan, you know, with the right permissions and whatnot, you can freelance. You can do things. You can build a portfolio professionally, where you can go out there and figure out how to make your own invoices and whatnot. I, again, seek people, seek mentors, seek folks. See, that's the reason why the club is important. You know what I'm saying? I just want to say that you can't do it alone. Anybody who claims they can is lying to you. It's all cap. Ain't nobody out here eating T-bone steaks by themselves, all by themselves. No, somebody helped them get there. Somebody helped make the table, the plate, all that. And how grateful they are for that, now that's another story. Like, the biggest lie you'll tell yourself is that you have to do this alone. And you can't, you won't, you shouldn't. Going from that. So from the club, what I wanted to do was to make at least one big project. And that big project came in the form of one of the students that I was studying with named Dennis Livingston. He's still out here, actually. He was the director for a film called Occupancy. You can find it on Vimeo. Really, really creative individual. We make a lot of jokes because he actually looks like Winter Soldier. He actually cosplays him very often. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That project was great. It turned out very well. Mainly Japanese cast, Japanese talent, you know what I'm saying? It was so crazy seeing my name and katakana up there as the co-executive producer.
That is very cool.
And, you know, like, I mean, back then my Japanese my Japanese is still bad now, but like, I just knew it meant something. It just transcended language. Like, I was just like, that's me up there. And I took that and included that in my resume, as well as a bunch of other things that I tried to do while I was in the club. Through the club, I was able to get, funding for that film. Through the club, I was able to, ask for other things as well. I'm not going to lie, like, building my resume, and tying that all into an output that you can place in a community context. Because it's one thing for you to do something for yourself. And I think that's the thing that people need to understand as well. When you make a reel, when you make videos, they don't care that you made it. They care who you made it for, what you were making it for, what the context was behind that. Because what people don't seem to see is that people care about the liability that you took care of in regards to something. Like, nobody cares about this cool little experimental video that you did. But if you did that to tackle liability or to demonstrate that you could do something for somebody, you know what I'm saying? Like a proof of concept or like a mock-up video. And there's a company behind it, even your club. That matters way more, because a club, in my context, is tied to an institution, and that institution is a whole ass college. Right. And whole ass colleges have a whole lot of pull, and it gives it a sense of legitimacy. And as much as, and again, pragmatic optimism, those things matter.
You hit upon something really, really important that should be noted about Japan in particular, and that is just how big this, like, official stamp of approval from someone bigger than you is. Yes. And I'll go on a little tangent story here. I have some friends who are interested in coming to Japan, and there are a lot of hurdles if you don't check certain boxes. Like, for example, if you don't have a bachelor's degree, it is almost impossible to get a job here. Unless, okay, actually, you can do it, but you need 10 years of experience in like a technical field for them to even consider it. Long time ago, coworker I had when I was working at a startup, he was like one of these most talented back-end programmers for a very large American social media company. He came to work with our company because he just wanted to be in Japan. It was like a fun little thing for him.
Yeah.
He applied to get his visa, his working visa, 3 times, and they denied him every time. Only because he didn't have a bachelor's degree, even though he had all this incredible experience, incredibly talented guy.
Probably had accolades and all these networks probably pushing it too. It's like, so he got probably important people probably telling, hey, he qualifies. And they're just saying, well, we need the bureaucracy points to.
Basically.
Yeah.
So just to kind of drive home your point, that was an unfortunate circumstance, but every little bit helps when you have that seal of approval, when you have that little whatever, the NGPT test score, right? Like, it's worth something here for certain. And whether or not I think that's fair is another thing, but like, you got to be prepared for it.
Right, exactly. Just arm yourself like a shield. You know what I'm saying? Like, why not try to do it? Worst case scenario, you don't need it as much as you thought. Like, worst case scenario, if you don't do it, you're told no.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
The other thing that you said that I thought was very insightful and very helpful, and it's realistic, like you said, it's pragmatic. You start these projects or you have this vision for yourself for the future, and you start small, and that's okay. And then you build up your experience and you build up your portfolio, and then one thing leads to the next. And it's not like, okay, I'm going to move out to LA and I'm going to be a movie star overnight. It's like, no, the real world doesn't work like that. But it is possible if you go through the right avenues and you put in the work and you make the connections and you get that stamp of approval. One day, who knows? And I'm looking forward to this. We're going to see your name in katakana on some anime, and everyone's going to be like, oh my God, Savon did it.
Oh, thank you, man.
But I honestly, I
is
think
your goal to get me to cry, son? It's not going to happen.
I'll keep trying.
Jesus, let's keep going, dude. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if anyone can do it. I think you can do it, and the process that you're doing, I think sharing that with other people has a lot of value because, like, look, man, you're doing it, right? And that's what's important. One of the things that I want to achieve with this podcast is showing people who don't know the way different paths. And, it might not work for you personally, what Savon has done, but maybe he's going to give you some of the keys to help carve your own path. And I think there's a ton of value in that. And sharing that information, sharing that knowledge, it's priceless.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Knowledge is power.
Exactly.
Yeah. But, yeah, man. Through the club, and through the institution, by proxy of that, I was able to start a conversation because the company is actually gaining interns. That company that hired me is actually uses interns often from my college as a, typical thing and stuff. But since I was under a club as well, you know what I'm saying, there was a higher, interest in me because I was more active in my community and whatnot. And there were other logistics that were going on at the same time as well that I'm not going to get into. But long story short, they gave me a test of like 3 months of just going through the paces and stuff like that. And I passed through. And now I'm here. Maybe in other future episodes come on and I can give like the more nitty gritty aspects.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
This conversation will continue. Not that it's over yet, but like it will definitely continue in some other form somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
I do want to keep up with everyone's story and see where they're going. Having said that, I've got 2 questions here. What are your big goals moving forward? You've kind of alluded to them along the way, but you're working on so much stuff. Like, what are your goals, and do you see a clear path towards those goals? Like, have you set it for yourself, and you're trying to hit these goalposts, so to speak, moving forward?
Well, I'm just trying to, further contain those, armor pieces that we were talking about before, like those legitimacy stamps that, are important out here, your JLPT and stuff, trying to get that, other things as well. But my biggest thing is to, at some point, my goal, it's not really has like a standard timeline or whatever, is again to be like a creative producer. I want to be a person that can say yes to a project, link you up with the right people and get you somewhere. I want to be that individual because I understand as a creator what that's like to need to get funding for something, to need to, get, a social media base to get qualified before you qualify. You know what I'm saying? Like all this gatekeeping nonsense. I've been victim to all of that. And it's like, it's demoralizing to know that you can be able to do the work, but because there are people more popular than you, or you're not the favorite option, or you don't fit the mold of what their expectations are for somebody that is what they're looking for, they're going to say no to you and wait for the guy that they actually want, or girl or person or whatever. And that's frustrating. I actually have a story about this. I might have told you at one point, there was a artist out here that I was actually talking to for a bit, just trying to cover their story and whatnot. And they told me that they were actually able to socially navigate their way to working with a big, art house out here, like big stuff. And there came a point where there was real employment on the line, and they were kind of outdoing a lot of their peers in some way, but not being, douchebaggy about it. But they were above the bullshit, and despite that, the question came of what was their follower count.
Ugh. Okay.
And you hear about it like this, you know what I'm saying? And you think this stuff is just in the West. No, it's international. These problems are international. There are gates worldwide on how big's your following, who do you know, all that stuff. And it's like, it didn't matter that this person brought such quality work to that, to that place, to that business. It didn't matter. What mattered was how much attention and traffic, how much buzz can you bring to us just by proxy of us keeping you here.
Do you think there's any way to overcome an obstacle like that? Or is it just one of those things that's like, it is what it is? One of these, the world's going to teach you hard lessons. Just keep going. Just keep grinding. Just keep making those connections, getting those accolades along the way. And then eventually you're going to be that guy or you're going to be that girl.
I'm going to get a little controversial here.
Please.
I think at one point you could. I think at one point you could grit it out. How hypocritical would I be as a military veteran who's basically done so many things to just say like, oh no, like it's unfair and stuff like that? No, it's like, no, like there's an element of, hey, get your shit together. It's going to be like that. You're going to get slapped down. It's about picking yourself back up and whatnot. There was a time where I would have said the toxic notion of suck it up. That's how the cookie crumbles. If you want it, you'll keep wanting it, even when it's hard. The problem is there are people behind these gates that see folks that not only want it, but want to make it better, and are willing to make it better on the behalf of the gatekeepers. But because they're not in that in group, there's a threat perceived. And my thing is the focus now isn't on improving the castle. It's about keeping the faces familiar. You got to talk like us. You got to walk like us. You got to share our values. You got to have the same flaws that we have. Like, culture has become the primary focus, and there's no progress. Even when there's profit at the end of it, you have people doing things that are literally meant to create this, avenue of, I would almost say, elitism. And my answer is to stop banging at these gates and create your own. Create your own castle. They don't want to let you in. Fuck them. Like
that was the controversy here on Expat Lens.
The sirens.
I think that's definitely a legitimate concern, and I think a lot of people have probably been feeling that more and more recently. I wanted to see if we could maybe tie that and compare that to Japanese culture as a whole. You mentioned some very interesting things here. You're talking about in-group. This is a well-known concept in Japan. There's the in-group and there's the out-group. And if you're not part of the in-group, like they even have a special way of speaking, right? Like you mentioned it before, keigo. For anyone who's not familiar with this term, it's like an honorific way of speaking, and it kind of changes the language very significantly. So that's baked into the culture. Would you say, regardless of whether this is going on in the West as well, would you say it's kind of like accentuated in Japan in your experience? Like that in-group gatekeeping culture is stronger here?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, because, the culture kind of enables it. But no, depending on where you're at in Japan, I would say. Okay. In a place like Tokyo, in a place like, I would even say Kanagawa, or any of that stuff, when you're like in these urban areas where the economy needs new content, it needs new things to be made, new businesses and whatnot, if you come about it with the right way, they kind of gotta give you a shot. One of the things that kind of made me stand out as a person, and this is kind of a philosophy that I've even said when I was at Temple at one point, as like they were saying, be more reliable than their favorite option.
Ah.
You will see this everywhere, but even in Japan, I've done it before. There have been people there that knew the language way better than me. There have been people there that knew the culture better than me. Knew the people there, had more accolades, higher follower count, all the 9 yards. And just by being more of a person that can rely on, they have to trust you because you're there when the person they want isn't.
Right.
And when they trust you, that's getting kind of dark. When they trust you, that's power.
Absolutely.
And that power is a responsibility. And how well you respect that responsibility dictates whether or not they're going to give you that power again or more.
I can also attest to this. One of my previous jobs, the startup, it was a crowdsourcing online translation platform. This exact thing would happen. Like, I've got a short schedule. I need translators. I need people to work on this project. And I'm contacting the people who I know can do it, but they don't show up. So I got to take a chance with someone new. I don't really want to, but I got to take a chance. And then guess what? That person now becomes one of my go-to people. So absolutely. And I mean, this is not just about Japan, but like in general, I think it's a reality.
Right. I think in the West, though, if I can be so bold, things are so booming right now. And, kudos to that they can kind of afford to wait out the storm. I think Japan, though, is a lot more, I can't believe I'm going to say this, like more ambitiously driven about getting to the next thing, that they're just, I gotta say this too, I gotta give it up to this country. They respect hard work way more here.
Well, the working culture is pretty brutal, that's for sure.
It's pretty brutal. And, I say that with bated breath. But like, if you're there to do the work, man, they pay attention. Everyone pays attention. And it might elicit different responses out of certain people, but the thing is like the decision makers have to pay attention to that. This is a person that can do the work, that is hardworking. It doesn't matter that this person has more or any of those things. Now, some of these more international communities and stuff like that, or some of these too big to fail places, like the one that I mentioned earlier about my buddies, the follower count stuff, they can afford to say no.
Right.
And it's like, at that point, that goes back to what I brought up before. Build your own castle. Build your own castle with people that either one, can't afford to say no, or two, care too much to say no. Like, when I got this voice acting gig, I know that the people in that gig cared too damn much about this project to say no. Way too much. And, it's not the kind of thing that I'm not probably the conventional choice that they expected. But when I showed up and did my stuff, they were so happy with my performance. And that opportunity to demonstrate that I could do it and that I could show up on time, that you can count on me, you know what I'm saying? That opportunity meant the world to me. And now I did the thing, I have something out there now. And it's like, that's something that is going to require a little bit of humility from the folks that are chasing these things, because maybe you want to work at Netflix. Maybe you want to do stuff with Amazon Prime. Maybe you want to do things with these big companies and stuff like that. You want to make it big. I get it. I do. Guess what? They're not looking at you. They got like a whole list of their favorite options. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's one thing if you're competing with one or two favorite options. Those are that's what I'm saying. Pragmatic optimism. You got to be careful about these things, because the thing is, like, you can't be in a room where they got 50 others to pick from besides you. Right. They're not going to even notice that you're there that often, because it's going to be in their best interest to keep their favorite options online.
Yeah, I would say this is maybe you can disagree with me, but I think this is a trend that we're seeing in a lot of big media these days. there's remake fever, right? Everything is a remake. And it's like you're not willing to take a chance on new stuff, and they just want to make sure that there's a profit being turned. So,
in a familiar channel of
right.
but it has to come from familiar places as well.
Mm.
Familiar projects, familiar this is the formula that we have baked inside our business model. And sometimes it's not going to work, sometimes it won't, but it keeps the same people employed. That in and of itself validates my position, because those are people that have it in their best interest to keep me in power. You know what I'm saying? Gets a little Game of Thronesy a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Which is, again, I'm gonna say it again and again. Build your own castle, cats. Build your own castle.
I think the two biggest takeaways from our conversation today were the concepts of community and then also opportunity.
Yeah.
And where those two converge, and making your own opportunities through your community building, right? Man, it's been so elucidating. Really good conversation. We're almost out of time, though. Do you have any final thoughts for today?
Final thoughts. We talked about this last time, the Carnegie Hall thing, but I want to hit you up with like a new analogy that I kind of just came up with recently.
Do you want to say the Carnegie Hall thing just to put context into it?
Oh, yeah, sure. For folks that don't know, like, Carnegie Hall is one of the most prestigious places where music is played, live and stuff like that. And there you have a violinist that was part of, like, I think a social experiment. I'm not too sure. His name was Joshua Bell. Very, very talented guy. And he was playing publicly. And I think the point of the experiment was to gauge what the reaction would be from the general public.
So like playing in a subway or something like
that.
Yeah,
Something like that, yeah. Just playing out in public in a subway or something. His returns on that time were very minimal at best. The biggest, cash return he got out of somebody was just because somebody recognized him. And it's like, you go back to him being out in Carnegie Hall playing on a stage, and like they're charging exorbitant amounts of money just to even see this person, like the violin he had, like I think that was worth like a ton of money.
It's like 600 years old and passed down from generation to generation.
You know what I'm saying? It's like people had no idea that much value was there. And it's like you take that person and you place them in Carnegie Hall, all of a sudden they're acknowledged, they're recognized and stuff. People showed up for Carnegie Hall. They stayed for Joshua.
Okay,
and my thing is the platform and the castle is what's going to create that wave of energy that's going to enable folks to keep making, keep creating, and do bigger things. But Carnegie Hall was not built by one person. It was maybe envisioned by one individual. But imagine one construction or architect climbing that ladder by themselves, making every brick. I'm pretty sure they would slip and fall, and that'd be a problem. You know what I'm saying?
Indeed.
Right. We could talk about the other analogy next time.
Oh, okay.
Unless we have more time.
You know what? Let's keep rolling.
All right.
Let's just get it out there.
All right.
I mean,
I tell you what.
Give the people what they want.
So, the new idea that came to me, I'm just calling it this. I don't know if this exists. I guess I call it like a splash theory or the ripple effect. I have no fancy term for this, but I notice a lot nowadays that a lot of people are splashing. Just splashing and trying to get people to get caught up in what they're splashing about. Their big splash. I'm making a big splash in this thing. Care about my thing. Be part of my energy. One of the things that I wish people did more was, instead of trying to make their splash bigger than everyone else's, is look at the current. Look at what direction it's going, and see somebody splashing in a way that you agree with and splash with them. Because with enough people splashing in that direction, guess what? There's going to be a big wave. And the thing is, in that wave, everybody's going to win. I'm telling you, like, when there's a wave, everyone wins. And maybe there's an exchange of the baton of who's on top of that, who's the big kahuna. You know what I'm saying? But as long as you're riding a wave, you're moving forward. And I think everybody wants to get excited about their splash when everybody should be fixated on making a wave.
What do you get the impression is the next wave, or the wave that is coming, or the wave that you would like to generate?
I guess I'm still figuring that out, but why not things like this? Why not your podcast?
I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you so much for coming and spending time with us today, Savon. Really some great conversation, very insightful ideas. And I mean, we already mentioned it earlier, but I'd love to have you back on again, continue the conversation, see where you're at in 6 months or a year or sooner, whenever the opportunity arises, and share some more stories and some more advice and insight.
Yeah, Jack, hit me up, homie.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dog.
We'll see you next time.
As always, thank you for watching all the way until the end. Building your own castle, as Savon put it, is a key element for success in any country. But having a reliable network is of particular importance in Japan. A link to Savon's voice acting work is in the description, so check it out if you're interested in stop motion animation. Let's wrap things up here. As always, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Expat Lens.